This happened around 2 years ago, but I've recently been thinking about it because every so often, I get the "but he's still your dad" comment every time the subject comes up, and today, it happened again. When I, female 26, was 18, I went no contact with my parents for a little over 5 years. Both of my parents are toxic, but my father was a bit worse. To put things in perspective, I'm the middle child, yet still, I'm the only one to have never gone on a family vacation because I just wasn't ever considered family the way my siblings were. I spent most of my adulthood wondering why I wasn't good enough. Still, I always yearned for a dad and a mom. 2.5 years ago, I was pregnant and just getting out of an hurtful relationship. I was isolated from everyone, even friends. After going to therapy and working on my mental health, I decided I needed to establish a support system for myself and my baby. In hopes that they had changed, I reached out to both my parents. They had finally separated during my period of no contact, so they were living separately. My mom lived in a different state, so she wasn't able to help much. My parents seemed thrilled at the idea of having another grandchild and seemed really supportive at first. My dad was dating a new woman, and I thought she was really sweet at first, but then she got really controlling and manipulative really quickly. I'd see her call my teenage sister the most horrible names, and it was suddenly clear why my sister always hated her. One time, she insisted on coming to my last ultrasound appointment with me and my dad, and I could only have one person in the room with me, COVID, so she sat in the car. The appointment took around 45 minutes to an hour. When we got back to the car, I was feeling so happy over seeing my baby. It was an amazing moment, until we opened the car doors, and she started literally yelling at us for taking so long. She very quickly soured a sweet moment. I could list off all the things she's done, but it's not worth it. Anyway, the place I was living in wasn't the safest. My dad let me stay at his house for almost a month, just so I wouldn't have to spend even longer in a bad environment until I closed on my house. They were even nice enough to start working on a nursery for my baby at their house, which I didn't think anything of because his girlfriend said she wanted to watch the baby while I worked. It just seemed like excited grandparents to me. I was excited to have such a great support system during such a tough time in my life. During this time, he made it very clear he expected to be in the delivery room with me when I gave birth. He wasn't willing for it to be my mom and him because he refused to be in the same room as my mom. He was the cheater but acted like she was the devil, so it had to be just him. Personally, I didn't like the idea of being in such a vulnerable position and being naked in front of my dad, but I was just planning to do what he wanted anyway because I always wanted a dad. So if I had to make some sacrifices to get that, then I was okay with it. Towards the end of the month, I had my baby shower, and people really came together to help me. By the end of the day, I had pretty much everything I needed and more. Right after the baby shower, my dad told me he should lock the gifts into the room behind his, that they'd be safe in there. So I agreed. I mean, he had put me through a lot when I was a kid, but even so, I could trust him not to steal from me and my unborn child, right? No. The week before I was supposed to move into my house, I called him while he was on his break at work. I was nesting pretty bad. I asked him if he could unlock the door in his bedroom when he got home, or let me know if there's another key, just so I could get the things ready to bring to my house. I wasn't adamant about it, just asked him to do it whenever he had the chance, or whenever we were both free since I worked too. I was very polite about this. The sellers were letting me move in some of my things early, so I wanted to get a lot of the stuff done. He said no. He refused to ever let me have my things. I wish I could tell you there was some sort of trigger to this or that I saw this coming, but I didn't. It really did come out of nowhere. I thought we were good. He went on about how I probably wasn't even going to let him in the delivery room with me. I had planned on it. I never told him otherwise. After he said that, I told him he'd never be in my life and that he would never meet my child or any future children I have. And I meant it. Even if he had given me my stuff back, the fact that he said he wasn't going to at any point, I can't have someone in my life that even considers doing that to me or my children. I went on to have my mother and my sister in the delivery room with me, and it was an incredible experience. After the whole ordeal, multiple family members told me they were glad I cut contact with him because they were sure he was going to try to do something, so I'd look bad so he could have custody. I'm so glad I didn't trade one aggressor for another by continuing to let my dad walk all over me. I've now moved to another state, living with the man of my dreams and our 2 children that my father has never met. Today, me and a friend from my hometown were messaging, having a conversation about our parents. She has a very good relationship with her parents. When I brought up that my father hasn't even met my children, she said I overreacted when I cut contact and I'm denying my children a bond with their grandparents. So Reddit, am I the jerk for going no contact with my father? Edit. To answer some questions. Yes, I did tell everyone who gave me gifts that their gifts were stolen. Yes, I did contact the police and the sheriff. Neither would help me. They told me I'd need to bring my father to court. I would have done that, but I had just bought a house, I couldn't afford a lawyer, and I was just ready to be done with him completely. Me and my now husband got together shortly after I had my first child. He was my biggest supporter. We were longtime friends, and it was a long time coming, so we got serious pretty quickly, and he's raised both children as his own. Edit #2. I couldn't break down the door or take it off its hinges. There were other people in the house as my dad's girlfriend doesn't work. I was 9 months pregnant and already under a lot of stress. They definitely would have called the cops if I tried to break into the room. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You lost me when Dad insisted on being in the delivery room when you give birth. I have to go barf for a month. Oh, not the idiot. Comment 2. Nope. And to the people that say, he's still your dad, respond that no, he isn't, because you disowned him, not the idiot. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my update. It's been a rough 3 days since I last posted about my situation with my father. Shortly after I made the post, my father somehow found out about it. I'm not sure how, but I suspect someone who knows both of us must have seen it and told him. He called me, furious, demanding to know why I was airing our dirty laundry online. I tried to explain that I was just looking for advice and support, but he wouldn't listen. He started yelling at me, calling me ungrateful and selfish, just like he used to when I was a kid. The next day, I got a call from my sister. She was in tears, telling me that our father had shown up at her house, drunk and belligerent. He was ranting about how I had turned everyone against him and how he was going to make me pay. My sister tried to calm him down, but he just got more agitated. Eventually, he stormed out, but not before breaking a window in her living room. I was horrified. I knew my father had a temper, but I never thought he would take it out on my sister. I called her back immediately and apologized profusely. She said it wasn't my fault, but I could tell she was shaken up. The following day, I got a call from the police. They told me that my father had been arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. Apparently, after leaving my sister's house, he had gone to a bar and started a fight with another patron. The police had to be called to break it up. I was stunned. I knew my father had his issues, but I never thought he would spiral out of control like this. I couldn't help but feel guilty, like I had somehow caused all of this by posting about our problems online. As I sat there, trying to process everything that had happened, I started to think back on my childhood. I remembered all the times my father had made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I was a burden to the family. I remembered how he would fly into a rage over the smallest things, how he would belittle and demean me in front of others. I realized that my father's behavior wasn't just a result of my post. It was a pattern that had been going on for years, a cycle of abuse and manipulation that I had been trapped in for most of my life. I thought about my own children and how I wanted to break that cycle. I didn't want them to grow up feeling like they weren't loved or valued, like I had. I didn't want them to be subjected to the same kind of emotional abuse that I had endured. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision by cutting my father out of my life. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't without its consequences, but it was necessary for my own well-being and for the well-being of my children. I know some people may still think I overreacted or that I'm denying my children a relationship with their grandfather. But the truth is, my father has never been a positive influence in my life. He has only ever caused pain and suffering, and I refuse to subject my children to that. So while the past few days have been difficult, I know I'm doing what's best for myself and my family. I'm grateful for the support of my husband and my sister, and I know that together we can overcome anything. Thank you for reading and for all of your support. Am I the idiot for kicking out my husband's friend after he revved his motorcycle under our baby's room? My husband and I have a home that has the garage underneath our living space. With summer upon us, he has been having his buddies over for his typical summer parties. This is normal and I have no issue with it. Up until this year, I was also down in that garage hanging out with everyone. But this year, we have a baby. She was 5 days old when this happened. Now my husband is a great man and a fantastic father and has really cut back on having people over. However, it's like his buddies are so excited to get back here that they turn ignorant once we finally do open our doors. This was the hangout spot because we have a huge fire pit, billiards, karaoke, and a bar. This past weekend, my husband had people over to kick off summer, and he has one friend, who we will call Nate, who has never been very mindful of anything around him. He's like a giant kid, despite being well into his late 30s. He shows up on his brand new motorcycle and parked it in our garage. We were supposed to get rain, so I couldn't tell you why he drove the bike, but I'm assuming he just wanted to show it off. There were probably about 8 people here, I think. I was upstairs with our baby, told my husband to have a good time, and went about my night. Well, my husband took off around 8 p.m.-ish to go grab beer, leaving Nate and the rest of the guys in the garage except for John, who went with my husband. The store is only 5 minutes away. I had just gotten the baby to sleep, when all of a sudden my home is literally shaking. The motorcycle is revving consistently, extremely loud and continuously, right inside my garage and underneath our living area. I could not hear anything over that motorcycle. To paint a picture here, when the guys are over and in the garage, you can literally hear them speaking. So the revving of this motorcycle completely overtook our home. My baby started screaming bloody unalive. I'm trying to cover her ears, but that's just not doing anything. I grabbed the baby and went outside, where the sound was much quieter. I went to the garage and lost my temper entirely. I told Nate that he was an inconsiderate person. He knows how thin that floor is. He knows our living area is directly above the garage, and that we have a 5-day-old baby. And he decided to show off by revving his Harley in the garage for, not kidding, 5 minutes straight. I told him he had to leave. He apologized, said he forgot, he wasn't thinking, etc., etc. My husband shows back up. The baby is still screaming bloody unalive in my arms. My husband takes the baby and asks what's going on, and me still being upset, loudly told him how Nate decided to rev his bike up for 5 minutes and probably gave the baby a migraine because of how loud it was upstairs and that he needed to leave. My husband looked at Nate and said, "Why would you do that?" And Nate got angry and said, "I already said that I just wasn't thinking." My husband kind of turned to me and said that we should just move on. But I was honestly so angry that I said we would move on once Nate was gone. This isn't the first time he's been incredibly inconsiderate. My husband just let out a sigh, shook his head, and said maybe everyone should leave. This was a bad idea, and walks upstairs with the baby. Nate's girlfriend turned to me and said it was an honest mistake and you just became so unhinged that you embarrassed your husband. I hope you feel good about yourself, psycho. Everyone left without looking at me, and my husband hasn't said anything to me about it other than he gets it. Am I the idiot? ETA. I was probably still upset because Nate came here when the baby was 2 days old and started scream-talking as soon as he walked in and got the baby crying then too. When I told him to quiet down, he said, "You need to be loud around babies so they will sleep through it," and kept being disrespectful until my husband took him outdoors. So he's just not respectful at all. Edit. I told my husband he could have his buddies over. He made it clear to them that no one was allowed in the main house, and I heard him repeat several times that the baby was upstairs and to be respectful. I have 0 issues with my husband having people here. My husband is a good man and he respects me above all else. Was having people over with a 5-day-old baby the best idea? Probably not. But he also hasn't hung out with anyone for months, because the last 3 months of my pregnancy were extremely rough and I needed a lot of help, so he was unavailable to everyone. He deserved a night, and I feel terrible that I cut it short, without meaning to. Nate waited until after my husband left to go to the store to act like a teenager. He wouldn't have done that if my husband was here. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Nate needs a timeout from your house. Most new moms don't have anyone, including extended family, for a couple weeks like parents, grandparents, and the baby. And that is it. A full party is crazy. Your baby has no immune system, no context of anything outside of the womb. I'm going to need to know where Nate got his medical degree from, but he can F right off. And your husband's first priority is to your baby. So no, he shouldn't be embarrassed. He stepped up, he should be proud. I'd recommend when you are a little further into summer and ready, have another bathing, but don't include Nate. He needs to understand that all the grown-ups now have to be mindful of the child, and he isn't the child. Comment 2. Nate's girlfriend turned to me and said, "It was an honest freaking mistake, and you just became so unhinged that you embarrassed your husband. I hope you feel good about yourself, psycho." Well, that biatch should not be invited over again, with or without Nate. What a couple of freaking morons. The others seem okay and understanding, but I'm totally on your side. Not the idiot, of course. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a wild couple of weeks since my last post. Thanks for all your support and advice. A lot has happened, so let me fill you in. After the motorcycle incident, things were tense between my husband and me. We had a long talk about Nate's behavior and how it affected our family. My husband agreed that Nate crossed a line, but he also felt bad for ending the party abruptly. He suggested giving Nate another chance, but I was hesitant. A few days later, Nate showed up at our door unannounced. He apologized profusely for his actions and promised to be more considerate in the future. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let bygones be bygones. My husband was thrilled, and they started planning another get-together. The day of the party arrived, and I decided to stay upstairs with the baby to avoid any potential drama. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until I heard a loud crash from the garage. I rushed downstairs to find Nate sprawled on the floor, surrounded by broken glass. Apparently, he had been trying to do a trick on his motorcycle and lost control, crashing into our bar area. My husband was furious. He told Nate to leave and never come back. Nate's girlfriend started yelling at me, blaming me for the whole situation. She said I had been too hard on Nate and that my attitude had pushed him to act out. I was stunned and hurt by her accusations. In the days that followed, I learned some disturbing things about Nate's past. Apparently, he had a history of reckless behavior and had been kicked out of several friend groups for his antics. My husband had known about this but never told me. He thought Nate had changed and deserved a second chance. I felt betrayed and angry. How could my husband keep something like this from me? I started to question his judgment and wondered if he prioritized his friends over our family's safety. We had a huge fight, and I even considered taking the baby and staying with my parents for a while. But then I remembered something from my own past. When I was younger, I had a friend who struggled with addiction. I stood by her through thick and thin, even when others turned their backs on her. It wasn't easy, but I believed in second chances and the power of forgiveness. I realized that my husband was trying to do the same thing with Nate. He saw the good in him and wanted to help him become a better person. While I didn't agree with his methods, I could understand his intentions. We had another long talk and agreed to set clear boundaries with Nate and anyone else who came into our home. We also promised to be more open and honest with each other about our feelings and concerns. It's been a challenging few weeks, but I feel like we've grown stronger as a couple. We're learning to communicate better and prioritize our family's well-being. As for Nate, he's still around, but he's been keeping his distance. I don't know if he'll ever truly change, but I'm trying to have faith in the power of second chances. Thanks for listening, everyone. It's been a busy ride, but I'm grateful for the lessons learned and the love of my family. Until next time, take care. Am I the idiot for not letting my kids move back with my sister after she kicked us out because of my autistic son? I, 47-year-old female, was married for 21 years with 3 kids, now 16-year-old female, 15-year-old male, and 13-year-old male when my husband died from a stroke. My husband was a great man who always tried his best. He always had his heart set on being an entrepreneur, but struggled with making tough business decisions. 2 years before the stroke that ended the life of him, he had another stroke, and that made him prone to impulsive decisions. He hired a friend who was a lousy bookkeeper and gave him further bad advice. My husband insisted I stop working when our youngest son, 13-year-old male, was born. Before that, I had worked part-time as a receptionist and then helped him with administrative tasks, co-signed on business loans I didn't fully understand, and was on a business bank account. I supported him through the lows of when one business failed and then he started another. My youngest son, Mark, is severely autistic. My husband died with a lot of debt and a lot of negligence in terms of bookkeeping and taxes. I tried leveraging my unique experience being the head admin of a household with an autistic kid to executive assistant roles or school jobs, but besides a noon aide job, the schools were not hiring. My sister invited us all to stay with her and share household expenses, but she told me a few months in that her 11-year-old daughter is afraid of my 13-year-old, and my brother-in-law started claiming my 13-year-old's expenses were an excessive burden. They were saying my 13-year-old needed to leave, which obviously translated to me having to leave, but I had $120 in my account at the time. They evicted us, but it's only on my record, 4 months ago, and my kids and I had to first live in a car and then a shelter. My sister then calls my older kids behind my back and tells them that if they continue to keep their room clean as before and pull their weight around the house, they could move back in. Then her and my kids exchange texts where they complain about how dealing with shelters and motels has affected their brother. My kids then tell me they want to move back to their aunt's house. I tell them she evicted me and, by extension, all of us. And if she doesn't want me or her brother there, then she doesn't want any of us because we are a unit. Despite that, they continue to want to live with their aunt. I ask them, what kind of mom would I be if I just gave my kids away to somebody else? And I don't understand why they aren't angrier at their aunt and uncle for saying their younger brother is a burden, and how them hurting him hurts me and them too. I tell them if they want to go, they have arms and legs. But if they are making this decision, know that their brother will feel like they are traitors, and I feel betrayed too. Am I the idiot? They are still with me, and I really, as a mom, feel it's unthinkable to just be separate from my young kids and still feel that I like to tell them a hard no, that they need to stay with me because we're a family, even when times are a bit tough now. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're the idiot. Your expectations of your sister and her family were unreasonable and unrealistic. She has tried within her own limits to help you, and by offering your older kids shelter, she continues to try to help. But it's an adult sibling relationship, not a unalived pact. Your family's needs are well beyond what she and her family could do on an ongoing basis. Your older kids need a safe and stable environment, and ideally to continue their education. If they have a good future, they might be able to help their autistic brother when they are your age. As their mother, it's your responsibility to want what is best for them, even if that means letting them go. You would not lose them or lose contact with them. Comment 2. You're the idiot. I know this is going to sound painful. My biological mom will never be the perfect mom, but she realized when she was in a bad way, she allowed me to live with my aunt and her family. You are struggling, but you need to understand that this isn't your kid's struggle. I'm sorry your life ended up this way, but this is about them. Your kids are self-aware and they want the stability that, sadly, they feel you aren't providing for them. I've been in this situation and I know it ended the life of my mom to have to hand me over to her sister, but it was for the best. Focus on yourself and sort your situation. And for the love of God, don't begrudge your kids for wanting stability. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post and for all the support. It's been a tough couple of weeks since I last updated, and a lot has happened. After my conversation with my older kids about staying together as a family, things seemed to settle down for a bit. We were still in the shelter, but we were making the best of it. The kids were going to school and I was trying to find work. But then, something happened that changed everything. I made a mistake. I was so focused on keeping our family together that I didn't realize how much my older kids were struggling. They missed their friends, their school, and the stability of living with their aunt. I was so caught up in my own feelings of betrayal and hurt that I didn't see how much they were hurting too. One day, I came back to the shelter after a job interview, and my older kids were gone. They had packed their bags and left to go live with their aunt. I was devastated. I felt like I had failed as a mother. I had pushed them away by not listening to their needs and desires. I tried to call them, but they wouldn't answer. I even went to my sister's house, but she wouldn't let me in. She said that the kids needed time to adjust and that I needed to focus on getting my life together. I was angry and hurt, but I knew she was right. I had to focus on getting a job and finding a stable place to live for myself and my youngest son. It wasn't easy, but I managed to find a part-time job at a local grocery store. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the days turned into weeks, I started to realize how much I had been relying on my older kids to help me with their brother. Without them there, I was struggling to balance work and caring for him. I had to miss shifts and turn down hours because I couldn't find reliable childcare. I also started to realize how much my husband's death had affected me. I had been so focused on keeping our family together that I hadn't really processed my own grief. I missed him so much, and I felt like I was failing him by not being able to provide for our kids the way he had always wanted to. But as hard as it was, I knew I had to keep going. I had to be strong for my youngest son and for myself. I started going to therapy and joined a support group for single parents. It helped to talk to other people who understood what I was going through. Slowly but surely, things started to get better. I was able to find a full-time job with benefits, and I was able to move out of the shelter and into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I also started to rebuild my relationship with my older kids. They started coming over for visits and even spending the night sometimes. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a start. Looking back, I realized that I made a mistake by not listening to my kids and by trying to force them to stay with me. I was so afraid of losing them that I ended up pushing them away. But I also realized that sometimes you have to let go of the things you love in order to do what's best for them. I'm still learning and growing as a parent, but I'm trying my best. I know that my husband would be proud of me for not giving up and for fighting for our family. And I know that no matter what happens, we will always be a family, even if we're not always together. Thanks for reading, everyone. I appreciate all the support and kind words. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.